So there are two main models of well-being or happiness in the world. There's the classic conventional, what I would call event-based well-being, and then there's inner well-being. So today we're going to explore the difference between each of those. So firstly, conventional or normal well-being happiness is basically an event combination with what my thoughts, feelings and sensations are about events in my life. And the idea ultimately to optimize quality of life, well-being, is to enhance the positives and reduce the negatives. Or you could almost say optimize pleasure, minimize pain. So that's the conventional approach, and sometimes they measure that by the gap between my expectations and my outcomes and how that's going. And really, the goal really is to try and reduce that gap so that how life's going is how I want it to be going. So this is why I would call it an event-based well-being model, because essentially it is an interaction with events. So the difference between that and what we might call the inner well-being model, which is also called by many other names, Enlightenment, spiritual awakening, or just self-actualization or inner well-being, is where the well-being is sourced from none of that. It's just a natural resting state of who someone is as a human. So we're going to look at what might be the steps towards that, and by actually just highlighting that in most traditions, usually it's always the peak or the pinnacle of where some paths or methods would, typically take someone. So, for example, if we were to go to, Hinduism, you might have the process where you would make your way up the, various sort of set of stages or methods to be able to get there, to ultimately to a place of samadhi, as highlighted in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, or if you wanted to look at Buddhism, it might be not just the Eightfold Path, but essentially moving one's way up, say, the 8 jhana states of levels of concentration, ultimately to those peak states. But there's so much one could say on each of those. But of course, Zen Buddhism that have that as well. But what we want to look at is how you get to these states and what the process might be for them. So it's not missing in any tradition. In Judaism, when you look at the study of the Torah, it's ultimately leading to that sense of that union with God. So, Sufis as well, they'll ultimately get to that place of that union or that absorption through self-purification. And then, of course, over time, the West has tried to pull some of these together, and certainly within the Christian tradition, the mystical traditions, passing through the dark night of the soul to that experience of union or the beyond. The common factor with all of these is the absence of, in a sense of self or ego, an absorption to oneness. However, that's the nomenclature, you could say, is always quite different. But the end point is typically always the same. So that's something that we would look at when we're trying to mainstream this. It would be to go, well, how does one pull those sort of general principles together and explain it? So in this sort of next section, what we're going to look at is what the psychological process might be, or you could almost say what the secular process might be to move oneself through those processes or stages. Because essentially, if it's the natural state of a human being, then whilst each tradition might have their methodologies, it really doesn't matter. If it's the nature of a human, it's more just what is the methodology to bring us to that place. So that's what we can look at.